My stepmother persuaded my father to lend my college savings to her son. For years, that $40,000 wasn't just money, it was my mom's last gift, her promise that I'd be okay. But one day, it was just gone. And the man who helped take it told me I was being selfish for being upset. 5 years later, I stood in court, texts in hand, and proved it was never a loan. I got every single cent back. You're gonna want to hear this one. I'm Connor, I'm 29, and I live in southern Missouri. I'm a diesel mechanic, the kind of guy who gets covered in grease keeping delivery trucks running. If your online order showed up on time, there's a chance someone like me was under a truck at 5 a.m. It's honest work, and I like it. Engines make sense. People? Not so much. My hands are permanently stained, and I've got a burn scar on my forearm I'll probably complain about forever, but there's a logic to machines. Break something, find it, fix it. Simple. Humans are messy. Take my coworker, Mitch. This guy is methodical. His toolbox has labels on every single socket slot. He logs every vehicle he touches, dates, mileage, everything. Not because he has to, but because, as he says, you never know when you'll need to prove something. Mitch, my buddy from our guard days, became my rock. He saved me in this whole mess. My mom and the fund. My mom died when I was 9. Ovarian cancer. It was fast. 14 months of machines, hospital smells, and then nothing. I remember my dad crying in the kitchen the night she passed. She had a life insurance policy, 50 grand. Dad used some for the funeral, medical bills, but the rest, about $32,000, he put into a college fund for me. He kept adding to it. Birthday money from relatives, everything. By the time I was 16, it was around $40,000. He always talked about it like it was sacred. Your mom wanted you to have this. That money wasn't just money, it was her. Pam and Brandon. When I was 13, Dad remarried Pam. She seemed okay at first, tried to be friendly. She had a son, Brandon, 2 years older than me. I won't lie, I wasn't thrilled. I was still reeling from losing my mom, and suddenly there's a new woman and a new kid, and everyone expected me to be fine. I tried. Brandon and I never clicked. He was loud, took up all the space, ate the last of everything without asking, and acted confused if you called him out. Dude, it's just food. Yeah, food I was planning on eating. The dynamic shifted fast once Pam moved in. Dad, who had been fair, started deferring to her on everything, rules, money, you name it. And Pam's priority? Always Brandon. Always. Brandon could skip school, and Pam would call in some elaborate excuse. I missed one day with a 102 fever, and Dad made me feel guilty. Brandon blew his allowance in 2 days, and Pam fronted him more from the grocery budget. I saved every cent from my part-time job, and nobody noticed. My dad, he'd see the unfairness. You could see it on his face, that he knew it wasn't right. But then Pam would say something, give him a look, and he'd just fold. Every single time. He chose the path of least resistance, and that path always ran right through me. I was the one who adjusted, the one who gave ground, because I wouldn't make a scene. I remember when I was maybe 15. Came home from work, and Brandon had just taken my bike. Didn't ask. Pam shrugged, he needed to get somewhere. I looked at my dad, and he just, nothing. That was the moment. The switch quietly flipped off. I stopped expecting anything from him. By 16, I was working at an auto parts store. By 17, I was spending weekends at a local shop, shadowing a retired Navy mechanic named Hank. He told me I had good instincts. That one sentence kept me going for months. Brandon, meanwhile, was doing nothing. Graduated with a GPA that started with a 1. No job, no plans. Pam said he was figuring out his next move. That next move was sitting on the couch for 2 years. The fund is gone. I found out the money was gone when I was 18, senior year. I'd been accepted to a state university, and I sat down with my dad to talk logistics. He got quiet. Started fidgeting with a pen. There's something I need to tell you about the fund. The fund was empty. He'd withdrawn the entire $40,000 6 months earlier. Gave it to Brandon. Brandon. The guy who couldn't hold a job, who couldn't be bothered to show up to his own high school classes, who once went 3 weeks without showering because no one was making him. My dead mother's money went to him. The reason? Brandon wanted to start a landscaping business. Pam had pitched it as an investment in Brandon's future. He needed a truck, equipment, a trailer. $40,000 would cover it, and Brandon would pay it back within 2 years. A loan, my dad said, with this look on his face, like he knew how bad it sounded. But he'd already done it. 6 months ago, while I was filling out college applications, thinking my future was secure. I asked about the loan paperwork. Repayment agreement? Interest terms? You know, the kind of stuff you have when you loan someone 40 grand. There wasn't any. No contract. No written agreement. Just my dad handing my dead mother's money to his stepson on a verbal promise that everyone in that room, except my dad, knew was worthless. An hour later, Pam came to my door. Connor, I hope you're not going to make this into a big thing. Brandon really needed this, and he's going to pay it back. Your dad did the right thing. My dad did the right thing? By emptying a dead woman's gift to her son and giving it to your kid? I couldn't go to that university. Couldn't afford it. I got some financial aid, but the gap was too big without the fund. I enrolled in trade school instead, diesel mechanics. And look, it turned out fine. Better than fine, honestly. I love what I do. But that's not the point. The point is, I should have had a choice, and someone took it away. Brandon's business? Lasted about 5.5 months. He bought a truck, a nice one, way nicer than a landscaping startup needed. Equipment. Landed maybe a dozen clients. Lost most of them because he'd show up late, skip weeks, or just not show up at all. One woman called the house to complain he mowed over her flower bed and just left. Classic Brandon. By month 6, he was done. The truck got sold a year later. He kept the cash. Equipment sat in Pam's garage, gathering dust. The trailer got a flat and never moved again. I saw it every time I visited, just sitting there rotting. A $40,000 monument to a scam nobody wanted to call a scam. And the repayment? Not a single dollar. Not one. Dad would bring it up occasionally, and Pam would shut it down. He's going through a rough patch. You can't squeeze blood from a stone. I moved out at 19, got my own place, started at the Fleet Yard. I put my head down and built a life with nobody's help. I visited Dad maybe 3 times a year. Christmas, his birthday, one random summer visit. We never talked about the money. It just sat there between us, like something dead that nobody wanted to pick up. That was the deal for 5 years. Just pretend it didn't happen. Pretend I wasn't robbed. Pretend Brandon wasn't living exactly the same way he always had, while I worked 60-hour weeks to cover what that fund should have covered. The turning point? What changed? 6 months ago, my dad called about estate plans. He's 61 now, not sick, just being responsible. He'd hired a lawyer to draft a will and wanted me to look at it. One section stopped me cold. The sum of $40,000 previously advanced to Brandon Hollister shall be treated as an advance on his inheritance and deducted from his share of the residual estate. My mother's life insurance money, listed as an advance on Brandon's inheritance. Not money that needed to come back to me, but an advance on his cut. That meant my dad knew Brandon was never paying it back. And even in his will, he wasn't making me whole. Something clicked that night. 5 years of letting it go, and one paragraph brought all of it rushing back. The next morning, I called Mitch. Told him everything. He listened for 20 minutes, then, in typical Mitch fashion, said, "How much documentation do you have?" No speech about feelings, just what do we have, and what do we need? I pulled everything. Original fund statements with my mom's name. My dad's texts from when he told me. Screenshots of the empty balance. Brandon's old business page. The will draft. Mitch came over with a 3-ring binder and a label maker. You know Mitch. We built the file over 2 weekends. Everything by date, section tabs. Mitch even pulled property records showing Brandon's truck sale. By the end, the binder was 1.5 inches thick. Mitch flipped through it, nodded. Get a lawyer. The lawyer and the texts Dana, my lawyer, was sharp. Mitch's wife's cousin recommended her. She didn't waste time. I brought that thick binder. Dana went through it page by page for 30 minutes. I sat there, trying not to fidget, watching a slightly crooked clock. When she finished, She looked up. Your father withdrew money from an account established with your mother's life insurance proceeds, designated for your education, and gave it to his stepson with no loan agreement, no repayment terms, and no documentation. The stepson never repaid any portion. Your father's own will acknowledges the payment while failing to provide for your restitution. You have a strong case for conversion, essentially, the unauthorized taking of your property. She explained the fund was in my name, the money from my mom. My dad had a fiduciary duty to use it for my education. Draining it for someone else was a breach. The lack of paperwork made it even worse for him. But what she really wanted? The communications between your father and stepmother. That's where this case gets decided. We filed the civil suit, $40,000 plus interest against my father, Brandon, and Pam. Once filed, we had tools to compel records. What came back was worse than I expected. Texts between Pam and my dad, going back months before the withdrawal. Pam's pitch started casual. What about Connor's education account? He's got years before college. We could borrow from it and have Brandon pay it back before Connor needs it. My dad pushed back, gently, weakly. That money is from his mom. It feels wrong. And then Pam's response, the one that perfectly summed up my childhood. Connor's the type who'll figure it out on his own no matter what. Brandon needs this more. Connor's the type who'll figure it out on his own. There it is. The whole philosophy. She kept grinding him down for weeks, framing it as temporary, a loan. Brandon would pay it back with interest. She'd personally make sure of it. But then, the separate thread. Between Pam and Brandon. Where the word loan never appeared once. Pam to Brandon. I'm working on your dad about the money. Brandon, how much are we talking? Pam, the whole thing. About 40. You'll need a truck and equipment to make it look real. Make it look real. Brandon, and I don't have to pay it back, right, Pam? It's Connor's school money. Once it's spent, it's spent. Nobody's going to sue a family member over it. Just make sure you actually buy the business stuff so it looks like a real investment. She wasn't setting up a business. She was setting up a cover story. The whole thing was set dressing. Dana read those texts, set them down, and simply said, this isn't a gray area. This is fraud. Mitch's response? They're done. The fallout and pretrial drama. My dad called me about 4 days after he got served. His voice was shaky. What are you doing, Connor? I'm trying to get back what was taken from me. It was a loan, Dad. Dad, I said, I've seen the texts between Pam and Brandon where she told him he'd never have to pay it back. Where she said to make it look like a real investment. Want me to read them to you? 30 seconds of silence. Then, she told me he'd pay it back. I know. She lied to both of us. The difference is you signed the check. Pam went on a full smear campaign within the week, calling relatives, telling her version. In her version, I was an ungrateful son suing his elderly father over a misunderstanding. She left out the fraud, the texts, the part where she told Brandon he'd never have to pay it back. All anybody heard was, Connor is suing his own father. My aunt, my dad's sister, called me. Started with the guilt trip. Family doesn't sue family. You should be ashamed. Did you even think about what this would do to your father's heart? I told her the full story. The texts. Pam's messages to Brandon. The cover story. All of it. She got real quiet. I didn't know that part. Nobody did, I said, because Pam made sure they didn't. Before court, a couple of key things happened. First, Brandon. The genius didn't get a lawyer. Didn't respond to anything. So, a default judgment was entered against him for the full amount. He owes me $40,000 plus interest, and he didn't even bother to show up. That's Brandon for you. Treats his own future the way he treated that landscaping business. Second, my dad and Pam hired a lawyer named Gerald. His plan was to frame it as a family financial decision I'd agreed to by not objecting sooner, a statute of limitations argument, basically. Dana wasn't worried. You were a minor when it happened. The clock didn't start until you had capacity. And the will provision 6 months ago is a fresh acknowledgement of the debt. Gerald knows this is weak. He's playing for a settlement. Third, my dad called the week before court. Not through Gerald. Called my phone at like 8 p.m. Connor, can we just handle this without a judge? I'll figure out a way to get you the money. Just give me time. He sounded old. Not old like age, but old like tired. Like whatever fight he had in him got used up years ago by a woman who had more of it. I told him it was too late. That I'd given him 5 years to make it right, and he spent those years pretending it didn't happen. He said he understood. His voice cracked a little. I felt bad for about 30 seconds. Then I thought about reading that will, seeing my mother's money listed as an advance on Brandon's inheritance. And the 30 seconds were over. Court day. Wednesday morning. I got there early with Mitch, who insisted on coming. I didn't organize that binder for someone else to watch it get used, he said. My dad wouldn't look at me. Pam was in a blazer. Brandon wasn't there, naturally. The judge was a guy in his late 50s, with a face that said, "Don't bother trying to impress me." Dana laid it out chronologically. My mom's death, the insurance, the fund, the withdrawal, no loan paperwork, Brandon's failed business, 0 repayment. The will clause, then the texts. Up on screen. Pam to Brandon. Make it look like a real investment. Brandon to Pam, and I don't have to pay it back, right, Pam? Once it's spent, it's spent. Nobody's going to sue a family member over it. Gerald's defense was family decision. Connor knew. He waited too long. The judge asked Gerald directly, "Is there any written loan agreement?" "No." "Any repayment documentation?" "Verbal." "In 5 years, how much was repaid?" "None." The judge looked at the texts. "Those don't describe a loan. Those describe a plan to take money permanently while creating the appearance of a legitimate transaction." Pam took the stand. Started with her rehearsed version. Brandon had potential, a real opportunity. It was a loan. Things just didn't work out. Dana cross-examined. "Mrs. Hollister, your son texted, 'I don't have to pay it back, right?' And you responded, 'Once it's spent, it's spent.' Can you explain that?" Pam shifted in her seat. "I was just reassuring him. He was nervous about the responsibility. I didn't mean it literally." "You didn't mean it literally when you told your son he wouldn't have to pay back $40,000? It was taken out of context. And make it look like a real investment? What did that mean?" "I meant he should take it seriously. Make it professional. That's all. Make it look real, not make it real. There's a difference, Mrs. Hollister." She was quiet for a few seconds, then looked at Gerald. Gerald was looking at his hands. "I just wanted to help my son," she mumbled. "With someone else's money?" Dana pressed. "Specifically, a dead woman's money designated for her child's education?" Gerald objected. Sustained. But everyone in that room heard it. The judge heard it. I heard it. And Pam definitely heard it. I watched my dad during the testimony. And there was this moment when Dana read, "Make it look real," out loud. My dad turned and looked at Pam. Really looked at her. Like he was seeing something clearly for the first time in 13 years. She didn't look back. Just stared straight ahead. The ruling and aftermath. The judge took 4 days. Dana said that was fast. The judgment was in my favor against all 3 defendants, jointly and severally. $40,000 principal, $9,200 prejudgment interest, $6,800 attorney fees. Total, $56,000. The judge's written ruling? It was something else. Dana read parts of it to me over the phone, and I could hear her tapping her pen, which I'd learned meant she was pleased. He wrote that Pam orchestrated the misappropriation of funds intended for a minor child's education through deliberate deception of the custodial parent. He wrote that my father failed in his fiduciary duty, but was materially misled by his spouse regarding the nature and terms of the transaction. And that Brandon received and consumed funds he knew were not rightfully his with no intent to repay. That "nobody's going to sue a family member" text, it got its own paragraph in the ruling. The judge called it an explicit acknowledgement that the defendants understood the wrongfulness of their actions and relied on family dynamics to avoid accountability. $56,000. Every dollar of the original fund, plus interest and fees. Enforceable against all 3 of them. Mitch took me for barbecue after Dana called. We sat in a booth, and he ate a full rack of ribs without saying anything for about 10 minutes. Then he wiped his hands, set the napkin down, and goes, that binder held up pretty good. Yeah, I said, it did. The resolution, the money, Pam and my dad started making payments 3 weeks after judgment. Not willingly. Garnishment. $800 a month from my dad, $600 from Pam's job. About 3.5 years to pay the full $56,000. Brandon's not paying anything. Doesn't have a job or assets. Dana put a lien on any future property or income. He apparently tried to buy a car. The dealer ran his credit, saw the judgment, turned him down. He texted Pam blaming me for ruining his credit. Pam forwarded it to my dad. My dad forwarded it to me by accident. Meant to send it to Pam. His text said, "I can't deal with this anymore. This is all falling apart because you told me Brandon would pay it back." I screenshotted it. Sent it to Dana. She called it the most useful accidental text forward in the history of family law. My dad, he called 2 weeks after the ruling. Different tone than I'd ever heard. Not shaky. Not defensive. Just flat. Drained. "I owe you an apology, Connor. Not just for the money. For all of it. For not standing up for you. For letting Pam run things. For treating your mom's wishes like they didn't matter." I let him talk. Didn't interrupt. She told me Brandon would pay it back. I believed her because it was easier than saying no. I've been doing that for 13 years, saying yes to Pam because no was too hard. And you paid for it. Literally. He asked if there was any way to salvage our relationship. I told him I didn't know. That the money was one thing, but the silence was another. 5 years of knowing what happened, and never once trying to make it right. Never once looking me in the eye and saying, "This was wrong, and I'm going to fix it." He let it happen, and then he let it sit there. He said he understood. We left it there. Haven't talked since. Not because I'm angry anymore, not exactly. More like, I just don't have anything to say yet. Maybe that'll change. I don't know. Pam and the fallout, she's not doing great. My aunt, who's firmly on my side now after seeing those texts, tells me Pam and my dad are fighting constantly. The garnishment hit their budget hard. They had to cancel a vacation. Pam picked up extra shifts. She's been telling her friends I tore the family apart over money, which is honestly impressive spin, considering she's the one who stole it. And here's the thing nobody predicted. My dad started going through old financial records. Not because of the lawsuit, that was done. But because the text showed him Pam had lied about the loan to Brandon. And now he was wondering what else she'd lied about. My aunt told me he found at least 2 other instances where Pam redirected money to Brandon without telling him. Smaller amounts, a couple thousand here and there. Credit card charges for stuff Brandon needed that Pam told my dad were household expenses. Nothing on the scale of the college fund, but enough to show a pattern that had been going on for years. Last I heard, they were working through it, which is the polite way of saying my dad is finally seeing what's been happening for 13 years, and Pam is scrambling to keep control of a situation that's already past the point of controlling. Brandon, oh, he showed up. Of course, he did. One Saturday morning, I was in my garage changing the oil on my truck. Yeah, still the 2011 Tacoma, still runs great, and I heard a car pull in. It was Brandon in a car I didn't recognize. Probably borrowed from whoever's letting him sleep on their couch this month. He got out looking the same way he always looks, rumpled, unwashed, like he'd been sleeping in that shirt for days. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't. You screwed me, Connor. I can't get a car loan. I can't rent an apartment. That judgment is on everything." Yeah, that's what happens when you take $40,000 and don't pay it back. It wasn't even my idea. Mom set the whole thing up and you went along with it. You spent the money, Brandon. You never paid back a cent. And you texted your mom asking if you had to pay it back, and she said no. That's all in the record, Brandon. He stood there for a second, getting red, then tried a different angle. You owe me. You always had it better than me. Your dad actually cared about you. Nobody ever set up a fund for me. Brandon, I said, my voice low, my mom died so that fund could exist. She set up a life insurance policy because she knew she was sick and wanted to make sure I'd be okay. You're standing in my driveway telling me you deserve that money more than I did. He didn't have anything after that. Just stood there with his mouth half open. Then he called me a name, got in the car, and left. Peeled out the same way he arrived, fast, loud. No plan for what comes next. I finished changing the oil, went inside, made a sandwich. My savings are better than they've been in years. The monthly garnishment payments are going straight into an investment account. Not touching it. Every dollar that comes back from that stolen fund is getting put to work the way it should have been from the start. I got promoted at the yard about 2 weeks ago. Senior diesel mechanic. Small raise, but it's more about the responsibility. My boss said he'd been watching how I handled the last few months. Showed up every day, kept my numbers up, didn't let the personal stuff bleed into the work. Consistency. That's the whole game. Mitch bought me a socket set as a congratulations gift. Engraved with my initials. So nobody steals this one, he said, and then paused. Get it? Yeah, Mitch. I get it. And there's someone new. Her name's Abby. She works at the parts counter at one of our suppliers. I'd been ordering from her for about a year. Always professional, always had the right part, never tried to upsell me. Which, if you've ever dealt with parts suppliers, you know that's rare. A month ago, I picked up a water pump in person, and we ended up talking for 20 minutes about nothing. Trucks, whether the biscuit place down the road was better than the one on Main Street. It is, and she agreed, which matters. She asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. First date was last Saturday. She's funny, direct. When I told her the short version of the family stuff, she goes, "So, you're telling me you fought for what was yours, you won, and you changed your own oil this morning. What's the downside here?" I said, "The downside is I still drive a 2011 Tacoma." She looked at my truck, looked back at me, and goes, "That truck's cleaner than most people's personalities." I think you're fine. Taking it slow, not rushing anything. I learned that lesson from watching other people rush into things and watching it blow up. Oh, one thing still bugs me. When my mom died, she had this jewelry box, wood with a glass lid, brass latch. She kept a locket in it. After she died, my dad kept it on the dresser. When Pam moved in, it got moved to a closet, then a shelf in the garage. Then I stopped seeing it. I asked my dad about it once. He said he thought Pam put it somewhere. Pam said she didn't know what I was talking about. I've thought about demanding it back. Probably won't, but it bugs me. Anyway, the truck runs good. Savings are growing. Got a date Friday. Life's good. Call to action, so there you have it. My stepmom thought she pulled off the perfect con, but the truth, and a very organized binder, had other plans. It took 5 years, a lot of anger, and a little help from a good friend, but I got justice. This whole experience made me realize something. Sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's against your own family. It's hard. It's messy. But seeing my dad finally wake up, seeing Pam face consequences, and building my own life on my own terms, it was worth it. I'm curious, what would you have done in my shoes? Or have you ever faced a similar situation where family betrayal forced you to stand up for yourself? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts. If you connected with this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.